Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Adrian San Miguel. I'm a principal specialist architect in our partner organization, AWS. And today I'm joined by Brad Gilliman and Isaiah Salinas. Say hi, gents.
Hey everyone, Brad Gilman. I'm a principal specialist here at AWS. Been here for about 6 years, and with me I got Isaiah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Salinas. I'm a specialist solution architect. Work together on the cloud operation team. It's been here coming up to about 4 years.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Now, today I understand we're talking about a pretty interesting topic as far as estimating costs in AWS Config and something about a new launch called Resource Exclusion. Is that about right?
Exactly, yeah. So just recently, Isaiah and I actually launched a blog that gives the customer the ability to now predict their costs that they're going to incur if they were to turn on AWS Config. This has been one of our top asked questions for CloudWatch or for Control Tower customers, and then also for a lot of our customers in the public sector segment where they need to be able to do prior our POs and whatnot in order to be able to move forward with the service. And we'd like to actually show it to you real quick. I think Isaiah had a little quick demo he was going to do.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I know, thinking back to my earliest time as a partner SA and as a specialist SA, every single customer, every partner I talked to said, we want to turn it on, but they had a bit of stage fright, a bit of trepidation in turning it on. And then being a news story where they say, hey, we turned this thing on, it was tens of thousands or unfortunately, in some instances, millions of dollars because they accidentally turned it on. So anything that you can do to help customers and partners out in better estimating their costs, I think it's going to be pretty well received. Any chance you can help us, for those in the audience who may not understand what AWS Config is, can you help us just set the baseline on what it is and help define it?
Sure, yeah. So AWS Config at its core, it tracks resource changes at AWS for the support resource types. And then what can happen is customers then can have a compliance check, and the compliance could be something that they deem, or it could be a managed rule where, let's say, for example, if an S3 bucket's open to the world or not. And so then that check would be able to run an evaluation and then return the results to the customer. And from there, they could do, say, auto remediations or whatnot. And so it's a very powerful tool that runs multiple other services here at AWS.
Very, very cool. The first thing that comes to mind is, the obvious question: if it can do that and ensure that customers can auto remediate, why don't they do it? And it always comes back to being able to predict what this is going to cost to turn that on. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, most definitely.
Awesome. Any chance that you can help us walk through the importance of cost transparency and why it's so important to use CloudWatch metrics for this?
But for this one, this is actually, we're going to get our data from CloudTrail is where we'll get the data. Isaiah,
Okay, fair enough.
real quick, how you can get the data?
Yeah, sure. So as you see on my screen, we're going to be utilizing CloudTrail Lake in particular to run a specific query that's going to check for specific events that CloudTrail is actually recording. And as you see on my screen, it has various different services that it's actually looking at. And basically, whenever there's a non-read-only event that CloudTrail records, it will basically take this and potentially mark it as a potential configuration item that could be recorded. So as you see my query, I'm also going to define it within a time range period, over a month period of time, to actually get an overall look as far as how many potential configuration items I could have had created if I had config turned on. So we're going to go ahead and run that query. And as you see, it returned the results, and it breaks it down by different services. So I have how many I would have potentially gotten if I had EC2 configured and other specific services. Now, this query can be customized to fit your specific workloads that you're running. So it potentially can get you a good potential as far as how many configuration items config could create. And with that information, you can then go into our AWS calculator and actually enter in the number of configuration items that potentially could have got created utilizing that query. And this will give you a good estimate as far as how much it would have cost you if you had config enabled for that specific month. So for an example, I'm going to go ahead and just put a number in here about 3,480. And you'll notice down the bottom, it'll actually give you the actual total cost of how much would be costing you if you had it enabled. Now, this is just configuration items, just one of the dimensions. You still got to take into fact role evaluation and conformance pack evaluation, but this gets you started as far as determining how much it would cost you to start up config.
Yeah, that's actually quite fantastic. Kind of making me feel a little bit silly and think back to my TAM and just generalist SA days where it was very hard to be able to really wrap your head around what this was going to be potentially cost. So ballpark estimates are one thing, but this is real de facto information using the customer's individual CloudTrail to actually help them make that informed decision and give them the no nonsense estimate of what it's going to cost over a given dimension. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, so it'll basically get them started to see how much it could potentially cost if they were to start it up.
Awesome. Yeah. And I would assume that this is kind of helping set the bridge between the folks in operations, the folks in dev, the folks in security to actually be able to come to the table and have that informed conversation about mitigating control or config items, ensuring that we don't have, for example, as you mentioned, Brad, leaky buckets that can potentially be auto-resolved, and then not being so gun shy about what it's going to cost at the end of the day. It's pretty awesome.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. So what can you tell us about that new launch, recording exclusion by resource type? And, one of the most challenging things that I had to run into as a partner, say, for a large SI was we want to turn it on for the world for all of our 4,800 customers with all of their tens to hundreds, potentially thousands of accounts. But we wanted to be sure that potential artifacts or resource types were excluded. We didn't know how to go through and do it. It was just a horrendous manual process where they had to go through and actually put human beings to do the task. I would love to hear anything that you had on this subject.
Yeah, so the resource type exclusion, what we've heard from customers is the old school way of doing it, where it was an inclusion list where they had to list out all the different resources they wanted to record, just wasn't scalable. For our customers to have tens of thousands of accounts, it was very difficult since it's per region, per account. And so what we've decided to do is flip the script around and make it an exclusion. And so now the customers will be able to go in and do a record all except, and then put in a list that you don't want to actually include. And so what we've done is we've actually authored a blog on this one as well, and we're going to highlight some of that here in a moment. But what we're going to show is how you can utilize our launch from this past year with CloudWatch metrics, where you can identify which resource types are costing you the most, and then you can use that data along with what those resource types are to make a business decision on, do I need or want to record these resource types? Of which, if the answer is no, then those were the particular ones you could put into the exclusion. And so those are the various portions that I think that we're going to demo here next.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
All right, so let me show you, as Brad mentioned. So we go over to CloudWatch. Under CloudWatch, we can build a basic dashboard. As you see here, I have a sample dashboard they call AWS Config dashboards. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually creating displaying a metric, utilizing a metric math formula to show me the top 10 resource types that have the most configuration items. So in here, you can see in here, I have all the various configuration items that are being tracked by config and which are the highest volume of configuration items. So if we're going to look at this briefly, what this metric math formula looks like, as you can see in here, it's basically taking all the metrics that config is delivering into CloudWatch and just grabbing the top 10 resources that have the most configuration items. By doing this, I'm able to have a single point of glass of this specific metric, and I'm able to then determine if I need to go ahead and exclude some of those resource types from my configuration recorder. And that's where we're going to go ahead and utilize this new feature that just recently launched with AWS Config as far as doing a resource type exclusion from the configuration recorder. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. So I'm in my AWS Config console here, and we're actually going to be in the settings of the configuration recorder. And we're actually going to go ahead and edit the recorder. And you'll notice you now have the ability to choose this specific option where you can say record all current and future resource types with exclusion. So if I were to go ahead and select that, I can then go ahead and selectively select the resource types I want to exclude from the configuration recorder. What's nice about the resource type exclusion list is that AWS Config will continue to record all the current resource types that you're not currently excluded, plus any additional ones that get supported also as well in the future. So this you don't have to maintain this list manually. So in here, I'll go ahead and define specific resource types. So I'll go ahead and put in there EC2 volume, for an example. Or if I want to also exclude EC2 instances, for example, I could go ahead and add that there. And this is where you're probably going to go ahead and utilize that CloudWatch metric graph that was displayed to show you those top 10 resource types. And depending on your workloads, if you want to go ahead and exclude some of those, you can do that. So once you have your list defined of which resource types you want to exclude, go ahead and click Save. And this is going to go ahead and update the configuration recorder to not record or track changes for those specific resource types. And as you see within your general settings there, it actually will give you a nice overview as far as what resource types you are currently excluding within the configuration recorder. So by doing this, you're now able to exclude those specific resource types and pretty much not track any of those resources that could potentially incur high volume configuration items.
That is pretty fantastic, I've got to say. So not only have we equipped individuals to go through and take the guesswork out of what they could potentially exclude based off of volume, and then go through and have a pretty intuitive way to take that information, plop it into here, set that exclusion so that they're actually going through and setting config on the things that they care about. That's got to be a time-saving game changer for a lot of companies and a lot of partners. This is something that I'm particularly excited about, and I look forward to customers and partners consuming it. I imagine that you folks have had a tremendous amount of feedback from different customers and partners that are pretty excited about this, I'd say.
Yeah, this has been our overall #1 product feature request that we've had on AWS Config, and so I think this is really going to help a lot of them have that ability to tailor down their costs. And right now, cost optimization is an important topic across the entire globe. And so I think this is really us, giving the customers those tools that they need in order to be able to do that. And one of the big things that we've seen from the conversations we've had so far is that the customers, of course, need to go through and make sure they have all the proper approvals and everything to go in and do the exclusions. So we definitely want to make sure that people check with their security departments and whatnot to make sure they can actually turn off the recordings of some of these things before they do. And I would advise that customers really look at the resource types. We have it all documented in our documentation on what they do and what they are. And so I think it's very important for them to understand what it is that they're potentially going to be turning off, and double check if there's any rules that they're using that they're not turning something off that is going to now all of a sudden not have a rule evaluation go against it. So definitely need to make sure that customers know about that and think about that before they start turning things off.
Yeah, I think the really cool thing here is almost intentionally, deliberately, we're giving something to the customer that they're not only asking for, but we're providing them a way to bring these different groups together: security, ops, management, potentially the third-party integrators that they may be working with, to actually come to the table and have those informed conversations. So it's not just going crazy and setting exclusions for everything. I think this is going to be a powerful way to ensure that everybody is on the same page and walking together jointly to try to actually make a thing happen. And I think that's pretty awesome. And I'm quite sure customers and partners are going to be appreciative of it.
Definitely. And one of the things that this also highlights is the fact that this keeps customers still enrolled in new resource types that we add. And over the past few months, we've been averaging, I think, about 20 new resource types each month. And so, one of the things that a lot of customers want to use AWS Config for is a true CMDB. And so the more resource types that we get added to be tracked, the more whole they are on the view of their entire portfolio. And so that's, again, where this becomes very important. For example, if we are to add a new resource type, and if it's potentially a high volume one, the customer will be able to see that in their CloudWatch metric and then make a decision, do I want to continue to record this or not? And so it's really giving a lot of flexibility to the customer to be able to get those new resource types without having to maintain a list themselves. Instead, just focus on which ones they don't want to record.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Back when I ran the MSP program here at AWS on the tech side, that was exactly the conundrum that partners were running into, where they were using config, but almost had to keep a running ledger of all the different changes and exclusions in a separate CMDB. So they had the CMDB for all the assets that they had in AWS, and they had to maintain that separate CMDB separately to just keep track of all the things that they turned off. While I'm quite thankful that we are no longer in those days, this is something that is going to be greatly appreciated by the partner community, I feel.
Definitely. We're super excited to launch this.
Awesome. Well, that about wraps it up for us today. Thank you so much, our audience, for tuning in. Gents, anything that you'd like to leave behind for the audience, potentially for them to go and explore outside of the blogs that we've talked about?
I think really just, focusing on the blogs will be very important as far as, go out and figure out how much AWS Config is going to cost you. And, just be mindful of all the new resource types that we're adding. And we are showing those on the What's New post. And so each month we're updating that. And so I think that's really important for customers going forward to get that holistic view of their environment. And definitely reach out through account teams and whatnot if they have any questions. We're definitely here to help.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in today, and we look forward to you catching up with us on the next episode. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.